April 21st, 1992. San Quentin State Prison, California. What if I told you there was a punishment so silent, so sterile, so scientific, it was called humane, yet witnesses walked out sobbing, haunted for life? A punishment born not from the dungeon, but the laboratory, one that didn't slash skin or snap bone. It stole your breath inch by inch in a sealed steel tomb filled with poison gas. This is not medieval or foreign. This happened in California. And in the early hours of an April morning in 1992, it ended in agony. The room is white, windowless, suffocating. The prisoner, Robert Alton Harris, is strapped to a chair, not wood. Steel, bolted to the floor inside a cylindrical gas chamber built to modern standards. Outside the viewing glass, reporters and state officials shift uncomfortably. "Any last words?" a guard asks. Harris clears his throat. "You can be a king or a street sweeper, but everyone dances with the Grim Reaper." He smiles. Then the steel door seals. At 6:07 a.m., the warden gives the signal. A lever cranks. 2 canisters of sulfuric acid drop beneath the chair. From above, a mechanism releases 6 cyanide pellets. And then, hiss! A faint chemical fog begins to rise. Within seconds, Harris's chest spasms. His back arches. His fists clench so hard, his nails slice into his palms. Reporters would later say he gasped for air for over 8 minutes. His face turned purple. He strained against the straps, eyes bulging, choking, but no sound escaped. One witness whispered, "It was like watching someone drown without water." So much for humane, the science of death. Let's take a step back. Where did this method come from? Not from Europe. Not from the guillotine, the noose, or the firing squad. It came from Navarre. A Chinese immigrant named Ji John was the first person in the world to die in a government-operated gas chamber. The state of Nevada wanted a cleaner way to kill, something less messy, more modern, more civilized. They believed that gas, the way World War I had killed thousands in the trenches, could now be repurposed, refined, measured, and used in the name of justice. The setup? A sealed steel capsule bolted into the ground. Sodium cyanide pellets were dropped into a vat of sulfuric acid below the prisoner's chair. The chemical reaction produces hydrogen cyanide gas, a compound used by the Nazis 2 decades later under the name Zyklon B. The theory was simple. The prisoner would inhale deeply, fall unconscious, and die painlessly in under 2 minutes. It did nothing for Ji John, nor for Robert Alton Harris, nor for the many others whose prolonged deaths played out before their grieving families. Breathing death. You see, hydrogen cyanide doesn't kill by stopping your heart. It attacks your mitochondria, the cellular engines of your body. It prevents your blood cells from using oxygen, so you gasp and gasp. But your cells are starving, suffocating from within. It's as if your lungs are full of air, but nothing reaches your brain. Witnesses in 1992 described gurgling, convulsing, and foaming at the mouth. Medical experts explained the prisoner is fully conscious while their internal organs begin to shut down. And here's the cruel twist. The gas chamber was built soundproof. So what you see is the body convulsing, mouth open wide, but you hear nothing. Just a glass wall and the hiss of death. Pause for a moment. If you're finding this story disturbing or eye-opening, leave us a comment below. What do you think? Is silence more terrifying than screaming? And don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from history's darkest corners. Now let's go deeper. The gas didn't kill him. The pole did. September 2nd, 1983, Mississippi State Penitentiary. A steel chamber, a man strapped to a chair, an audience of reporters watching through a sealed glass pane. The man's name was Jimmy Lee Gray, and he was about to make history, but not in the way Mississippi had hoped. The state believed this would be efficient, quick, and silent. But what unfolded in the next 8 minutes would be remembered as one of the most botched, gruesome executions in modern American history. The gas was released. For the first 30 seconds, Gray didn't move. Then, suddenly, he jerked forward, then back. Then again, his head slammed against the vertical steel pole behind his chair. He wasn't unconscious. He was thrashing. And the reporters watched in horror as he hit his head repeatedly over a dozen times on solid metal. He was gasping, one reporter said. I counted at least 11 or 12 times. Each gasp was louder than the last, each one more desperate. The sound? Bone against steel, gagging. The hollow thud of a skull under duress. One prison official later admitted, the gas didn't kill him, the pole did. What was supposed to be a clean chemical death had turned into a spectacle of suffering. And here's the part that chills to the bone. The witnesses weren't allowed to leave. They had to stand there and watch until it was over. The illusion of mercy. But how did we get here? How did America, land of the free beacon of democracy, convince itself that this was a kinder, more advanced way to die? The answer, as always, lies in perception. In the early 20th century, public hangings were falling out of favor. They were too raw, too medieval. Firing squads seemed cold and militaristic. The electric chair, violent, unpredictable, and often messy. Enter the gas chamber, sold as the future. Scientific, controlled, painless. States like Nevada, California, and Mississippi embraced the myth. They invested in sealed chambers, chemical suppliers, ventilation systems, and manuals for proper procedure. But here's what those manuals didn't say. That a prisoner might stay alive for 10 minutes. They might vomit. Their eyes might burst from pressure. The gas could linger after death, forcing guards to wait hours to retrieve the corpse. They didn't say those things because the illusion had to be maintained. Mercy by appearance, cruelty in practice. Dr. Richard Traceman, a pharmacologist, once explained, hydrogen cyanide doesn't sedate. It suffocates. The body knows it's dying, cell by cell. In other words, it wasn't sleep. It was drowning, without water. Robert Alton Harris, Revisited. April 21st, 1992. San Quentin State Prison. We return to the case that shook California's death penalty system to its core. Robert Alton Harris, convicted of murdering 2 teenage boys, had exhausted every appeal. He was the first person to be executed in California since 1967, and the method, gas chamber. But what the public didn't see, what court transcripts, journalist notebooks, and sworn affidavits captured, was how everyone in that room would walk away traumatized. As the gas hissed into the chamber, a visible fog swirled under Harris's chair. It began rising, slowly, silently, toward his chest, then neck, then face. He's breathing it in, whispered one reporter. His chest, it's spasming. Another witness said Harris's head fell forward, then snapped back as though yanked by invisible strings. His lips turned blue, then purple, then a gray so pale it looked inhuman. For 8 minutes his body trembled and twitched. He gasped, he gurgled, and then stillness. A medic approached the viewing window, checked the monitor, confirmed 6:21 a.m., time of death. But that wasn't the end of it. As the curtain was drawn, a member of the witness pool vomited. A guard reportedly burst into tears. Another stared blankly, unblinking, for several minutes before walking out in silence. Even reporters, seasoned journalists used to murder trials and war coverage, later wrote, "This was not justice. This was a science experiment gone horribly wrong." One headline read, "A modern death and a medieval spectacle, the legal reckoning." It wasn't just the public that was shaken, the courts were too. By 1996, just 4 years after Harris's execution, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the gas chamber violated the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. The ruling cited prolonged suffering, psychological trauma, the irreversible risk of botched executions. Justice Reinhart wrote in the court's opinion, "The process causes extreme physical pain and prolonged suffering. It is an antiquated method, inconsistent with evolving standards of decency." That phrase, evolving standards of decency, became a death sentence for the gas chamber. California was ordered to discontinue its use immediately. Other states followed. By the late 90s, the chamber was largely retired across the U.S. But was it gone for good? Not quite. Because in the shadows, it was stirring again. Arizona's resurrection, the return of Zyklon B. You might think the gas chamber was buried with the 20th century. But in 2021, a bombshell report emerged. Arizona wasn't just bringing the gas chamber back, it was preparing to use Zyklon B, the same chemical the Nazis used in Auschwitz, Dachau, and Majdanek. Let that sink in. A U.S. state, in the 21st century, ordering the very compound once used to exterminate millions. Arizona Republic Investigation, 2021. Through public records, journalists uncovered invoices revealing $2,000 spent on cyanide pellets, purchases of safety equipment, and the refurbishment of a long-unused gas chamber with new seals, airlocks, and ventilation fans. And then came the real kicker: test runs. Documents showed Arizona officials conducted simulated executions using a practice mannequin. Reports say the chamber was tested at 95 degrees Fahrenheit, the same temperature at which Zyklon B becomes volatile. This wasn't theoretical. This was preparation. Why Zyklon B? Because lethal injection, America's supposed humane alternative, was falling apart. Pharmaceutical companies were refusing to sell execution drugs. Courts were cracking down on states that improvised. And so, in a desperate attempt to keep executions going, Arizona reached into the darkest corners of history. They chose Zyklon B because they could, because it wasn't banned, because they thought the public wouldn't notice. But we did. Human rights organizations exploded in outrage. The ACLU, Amnesty International, and Holocaust remembrance groups all demanded immediate cancellation. Even Holocaust survivors weighed in. To see Zyklon B used again by a democracy in this time is sickening, said Eli Rosenthal, a 93-year-old Auschwitz survivor. Here's what's even more disturbing. Arizona wasn't alone. Other states quietly considered similar measures. Wyoming, Mississippi, and even California's past gas chambers were quietly kept mothballed, not dismantled, just in case they were needed again. Why? Because America's death penalty isn't just about justice. It's about politics. It's about power. And sometimes it's about vengeance. If you're finding this story as chilling as we are, drop a comment below. Should gas chambers be abolished completely, or do some crimes still warrant this level of punishment? And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into history's darkest corners. The victims speak, witnesses from the inside. Most stories about the gas chamber focus on the condemned. But what about the people who had to watch? Who had to press the buttons? Who had to clean the chambers afterward? What about them? Because executions don't just kill the body in the chair, they haunt every soul in the room. Take Warden Sam Cooke, who oversaw 3 gas chamber executions in Mississippi during the 1970s. In an interview decades later, he confessed, "They told me it'd get easier. It didn't. Every face. I remember every face." He described one execution where the man's chest heaved like a drowning animal. Another left behind such a strong chemical odor that the cleanup crew wore 2 layers of masks and still vomited. Cooke never slept the night after an execution, not once. Then there was Janice Holland, a corrections nurse assigned to monitor vitals from outside the chamber. You sit there, stopwatch in hand, waiting for a man to die. You're timing his suffering. What kind of job is that? She quit 6 months after her first gas chamber shift, diagnosed later with PTSD. But perhaps most chilling were the witnesses from the public, ordinary citizens selected by lottery, court order, or professional duty. In 1992, a newspaper columnist who attended Robert Alton Harris's execution wrote, "I went in expecting closure. I came out changed. What I saw wasn't justice. It was suffocation, slow and cruel." Another account, less known but just as haunting, came from Reverend Mark Peterson, who provided spiritual counsel to condemned inmates. He described one man just hours before his execution, whispering, "Do you think my soul will get out before the gas does?" Reverend Peterson didn't have an answer. He just held the man's hand. Gas chambers didn't just kill. They transferred trauma like a contagion. Everyone in the room carried a piece of the horror home. Some have nightmares, others to their graves. A 1993 study from the Journal of Correctional Psychology found that 38% of prison staff involved in gas chamber executions showed signs of clinical trauma within a year. Many turned to alcohol, others quit altogether, a few, heartbreakingly, took their own lives. So, when we talk about the gas chamber, let's not pretend this was just about the prisoner. It was a system designed to look clean, but it was built on the backs of broken people. The chamber's legacy, what do we remember? The last time California used the gas chamber was in 1992, but the memory? It lingers like the poison it once held, and as of today, those chambers still exist, not demolished, not erased, just waiting. Silent artifacts of a justice system that once thought death by gas was clinical, humane, even modern. But here's the question. Why does this legacy matter? Because the gas chamber wasn't just a punishment. It was a symbol of fear disguised as order, of cruelty cloaked in law. It represented a government trying to turn death into bureaucracy, to regulate suffering, to make killing look like science. But in the end, it was always the same. A room, a man, a slow, visible death. Philosopher Michel Foucault once wrote, "Where there is power, there is resistance, and where there is punishment, there is performance." And that's what the gas chamber was, a performance, one meant to show strength, control, and finality. But what it showed instead, it was our own reflection, and it wasn't always easy to look at. Today, very few countries still use gas chambers. Even in the U.S., most are now museum relics or hidden behind padlocked prison doors. But every once in a while, a state proposes to bring it back. A bill gets drafted, a chemical gets ordered, and we have to ask, what do you think? Should gas chambers ever return? Or have we learned our lesson? Let us know in the comments. Your voice matters in how we remember and shape the future. Thank you for watching. Gas chamber, the most terrifying torture methods you've never heard of. 1900s California. If this episode moved you, disturbed you, or made you think, give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and don't forget to share it. History isn't just what happened. It's what we choose never to forget. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. George Santayana,